there's nothing left. We believe the report of the Lord. Oh, we've heard your word and we agree. Although what you say is not what we see, Lord, we trust you and we still believe. Waiting, storms will pass when you move. Turn them. That you. We believe the report. We heard what you said. Yeah. Although it's not what we see. Oh, we still believe. We believe the report of the Lord. Yeah. And we agree. Although it doesn't look like what you said, it's not what we see. Lord, we trust you. Lord, we still believe. We shall believe the report of the Lord. We shall believe. We shall believe the report of the Lord. We shall believe. You said.
Connecting the community through gospel.
The new 107.9 FM, W300EB,
Macon and WDDO 980 AM
Perry.
Macon.
The views expressed on this program are not necessarily the views of the Glory 980 AM, the Glory Media Group, LLC, WDDO AM, its staff, management, or advertisers, but are the views and opinions of the participants of the broadcast.
It is now time for the live broadcast of the NAACP with Gwinnett Westbrook and Mr. Dumas.
And good afternoon, and welcome to another segment of the NAACP Truth Show. I'm Willie Dumas, your host. I'll be joined shortly by President Westbrooks. I hope you're having a great day today. We got a little rain, of course, this morning. I hope that's subsiding, and hopefully we'll get some sunshine before the day is over. Had a very busy weekend. I want to shout out and say congratulations to all our graduates, whether they were graduating from high school, middle school, or college. Congratulations to all of our graduates. I had a very, very busy weekend. Spent a lot of times up in Gainesville for graduation, and they had quite a large gathering there. And so I know it's a busy time all across the city for our graduates, and we want to send a shout out to them. Hope you've been following the news. Before we get into what we're going to talk about today, hope you've been following the news down in Florida. The NAACP put out a statement in that area coming from the national NAACP, and the headline says, "Beware, your life is not valued." The NAACP Travel Advisory warns Florida is openly hostile towards African Americans. Of course, this stems from some of the legislature that has come from the governor's office there in Florida. Actually, this article has some info on that. It says the alerts from groups representing Black and Latino Americans comes as the state's Republican governor, Ron DeSantis, is expected to enter the 2024 presidential race with a campaign that's built on tenets of the conservative agenda he's fostered in Florida. The NAACP issued a travel advisory for Florida in direct response. And so this travel advisory has been given for the state of Florida. Of course, we know the state of Florida is a vacation spot for many of us, particularly this time of the year. And so you want to travel there with caution, of course, particularly if you're African American. And so this statement went out earlier this week. And so we just wanted to make sure our listeners were aware of that. I see President Westbrooks
Yes,
has joined us.
yes.
How you doing, President?
I'm doing fine. And yes, I was reading that this weekend, following that this weekend. I think it was the NAACP and SCLCC was also
Right, involved in that.
yeah. And so, yep. This is the thing about it is, this is how they make their money. So, we just people of color just got to be mindful of that. And this governor has also, you know, um, he's issued a ban on
The history courses
right,
being taught, Black
right,
history
and
courses.
actually not funding those schools that teach anything related to uh, race
Wow.
issues, dealing with race. So, it's about trying to um, uh, for
This
people not to be educated on the on our history.
absolutely.
And every race has a history. We talk about the war and different things like that. That's part of a certain race history. So they want to erase history as far as slavery and how we were freed from slavery. And as we know that, when the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, everybody was not free at the same time.
Exactly.
The South and the North. The North was free, but a lot of the uh, slaves in the South was not free. So at the same time, but at the same time, they want to just erase our history, and so that is absurd to to erase something that's of um, a part of us that's always been in the schools, and so it's something that's not going to go away. And I just, a lot of times people make statements as far as, whenever we get involved in things, they'll say, well, the NAACP is a racist organization, which they don't know the history of the NAACP, how this organization
Absolutely.
was organized and who it was organized by. So they wouldn't say that if they knew the history of the
Absolutely.
organization. So they always say that we get involved. Well, we wouldn't have to get involved in um, different things related to race issues if there were not race issues. So
Exactly.
that's why we have to stay involved, because, here we is in 2023 and we're still dealing with race relations.
And once we cross one bridge, it seems like we go over another. We were dealing with voter suppression and
Right.
some
It's
of
something.
those
It's something all
things.
the time. It's you get over one thing and then you think that you know bypass one thing, and then something else come up that you have to deal with. It's always something being put in place to try to uh, take people of color and people of minority back.
Right.
So we deal with the LGBT community. We deal with uh, uh, different things,
Women's
women's rights and
rights.
all that. So we're always dealing with something that's a social injustice, or there's some type of injustice that's involved. So that's why we're still here. That's why we're
Absolutely.
here.
And the work just continues. I was
Right.
looking at this statement here. It says the NAACP issued a travel advisory for Florida in direct response to Governor DeSantis' aggressive attempts to erase Black history and restrict diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in Florida schools.
Hmm.
And so that's real serious, particularly if he's a candidate that's running for president. That means that, for the state of Florida, if he's imposing these types of things on a local scale,
Yeah.
then they're going to try to probably push it on a national scale.
Yeah, and so that's what, this traveling to Florida, y'all need to think about it. A lot of times people say, they're going to go on vacation but when you go to that particular city, you're providing fundings for
That's
that
right.
city, you're providing money for that state. So, I won't be going to Florida.
Absolutely not.
And that's saying we
Absolutely
need
not.
to, I think, and I'm not for sure, but I think that they were talking about having our national convention maybe next year there. So I'm pretty sure that's going to change if that's
Right.
the case. If that persists, they'll be fighting against that. So yeah, it's it's something very serious, and I just wish everybody could get on board with the cause. When back, it's just different with us right now, Mr. Dumas.
And back early in the years.
Yeah, in the 50s and 60s, uh, when there was a cause at stake and they said don't ride the bus, that means no
Nobody
one
rides the bus.
nobody rides the bus. So if the NAACP is giving a travel advisory, that means that don't nobody need to be going to Florida on
Absolutely.
vacation.
Absolutely. And
People of color and people that just like I say all the time, any race can join this organization as long as they believe in our mission and vision, and that's what I'm saying. Um, we're just not talking to people of color about going to Florida, even though we want people to support this cause because you're trying to erase our history. And the thing about it, Mr. Dooms, I say it all the time: people of other races know more about our history than we do.
we do.
We don't,
That's
they study our history
exactly.
because of the rich history that we have. People want to know about our history. So it's not just, whether he say it shouldn't be taught in the school. People going to do their own research because they want to know about our past. They want to know about our past. They want to know about our history. And so whether he does it, whether he removes it or not, but to me, that's a form of, it's just a form of racism to me.
Absolutely. And they also interviewed some Caucasian students as well as some black students, I think, through CNN's interviews. And as speaking with those students, they asked them how they felt about that,
Right.
and a lot of those students felt that if they understood more about Black history, that the relationship between blacks and whites would be a lot better,
It would.
And so to not have that history available to everyone, it just shows you the division that it causes as well.
Yeah, and that's been the whole thing is, like I said, Mr. Dumas, racism is a learned behavior. It's
Absolutely.
not something that you're born with. It's a learned behavior. It's taught. And so I just think that, like you say, people would understand the how people relate and react to each other if they knew the history.
The full history.
And like I say, I don't know how, because when I start researching it, even when I start researching the history here in Bibb County, Bibb County has a rich history dealing with race relations, back with the bus boycott, here just in Bibb County with the school segregation, where they adopted the Brown versus Board of Education. We know that um, Commissioner Burt Bivens, which his sister is uh, uh, school board, Thelma Diller, which used to be the president of the Macon Bibb branch NAACP. Also, their mother, Hester Bivens, filed a lawsuit against Bibb County to integrate the school system. And Judge Boodoo is the one that um, signed into law to passed into law to integrate the schools here in Bibb County. So we have a lot of history just right here in Bibb County, and it's something that we need to continue to keep in our school system and keep, because people don't realize there's other history being taught that's of the opposite race,
Right.
that's still in our school system. When you talk about the war was not fought by African Americans. So they have history. Different wars was fought by different race of people. So there's so much history uh, of other races. So I'm not understanding that. It's just absurd. It's just to keep people. I think they're looking at the fact that if you don't talk about race, people, yeah, well, my thing is by you not talking about, is that going to eliminate
Right.
the race and discrimination and social injustices and all that systemic racism? Is that going to just disappear in the state of Florida?
Wow.
So
Well, and communication is key with anything. If you're not, you know, having a dialogue about certain things,
yeah,
then it just causes more issues. So,
education is just the key. That's the bottom line. Is
and who's to say, we're looking at, history. We're looking at Black history now. What's next?
right,
What's
right,
next on the chopping block? They may
right.
even go and reverse, you know, Brown versus Board of Education. Who knows?
Yeah.
And so we just have to stay vigilant and know that these things exist. It's not fairy tales. These things
Well,
actually
Mr. Dumas,
exist.
a few years back, uh, some Bibb County schools was once a couple of schools was trying to do that
Right.
to stop the grades so kids could go to another school at a certain age group. And so what we saw was they were segregating.
Right.
It was segregate the school system. So the NAACP actually addressed that issue at the board meeting. That
Right.
it was against the law, according to Brown versus uh,
Board of
Board of
Education.
Education, to segregate education. And so they didn't go through with it, but they were trying to go through with it. So
Exactly.
yeah, so it's something all the time. But we're going to keep a follow on that. And like Mr. Dumas say, we just want people to be educated on what's going on in the state of Florida,
Absolutely.
where the NAACP made a direct statement and a travel advisory to Florida.
And we got a holiday coming up, Juneteenth,
Yeah,
coming up here in
Juneteenth.
a couple of weeks or so.
Yeah,
And I see a lot of activities are being planned.
right. And it's supposed to be a parade
Right.
also. And I think we're going to be participating in that parade. I got to get back with Maria to see, where we are with that.
Matter of
Uh,
fact, I spoke with a gentleman, Marshall, on
mhm,
yesterday,
mhm.
who was inquiring about our involvement
Right.
in that.
Yeah.
So that's going to be quite
Yeah. So
interesting.
this is going to
Yeah,
be the first time that a parade is going to be held, which I think is going to be awesome. We just got to get some stuff together. And
absolutely.
but we're going to move along to talk about some of the things that we've been working on. Um, we've had some issues with employment discrimination. And so I had called you last week, but you did call me back. But I just had a real busy weekend with graduations and all of that.
Yes,
I was out of town
absolutely.
attending some graduation, but and then I was just exhausted Sunday. So, but you know, we don't have a lot of haven't had a lot of complaints with employment discrimination. Not saying that we don't have them, but we do.
Right.
Majority of our complaints come from our judicial system, dealing with our judicial system. But we have complaints from different in housing. Right now, that's one of the two of the major issues that we have with a level of complaints. But we wanted to talk a little bit about employment discrimination because it do exist. Uh, Even though there's not, we don't get a lot of complaints from it, it do exist. And so, we had a couple uh, situations that arose from, and I'm not going to call the name of the company, but it was a big company. They're very well known in the community, and so, there were, some people filed complaints with our office, so we had to deal with that. I'm just so grateful that it was resolved. Uh, my request was for that person to be removed from that that department, and they did do that.
Okay,
And
great.
so, as a supervisor, that person should have been removed. And because people should not have to come to work
In a
and work in
hostile
a hostile
environment.
environment, um, and be subjected to um, discrimination. And people, and I'm not giving legal advice, um, because we don't give legal advice, but um, this is something that you can read for yourself. It is against the law uh, uh, to retaliate against someone by, once they make the statement in writing or they verbally express that they've been discriminated against. It's against the law to retaliate. Now, people say it is a law, but employers do it all the time.
Exactly.
They say, they have these policies in place, and these in their policy that they don't discriminate, they don't retaliate, but it happens because people are human, and they are in their feelings a lot of times when someone say that they've been discriminated against by them, or but it does happen. And so this is kind of what happened in this situation. Once a statement was made, and anything once you do that with make the statement of discrimination, if they come back and um, your evaluations are different, that's a direct form of retaliation
Retaliation.
to, and you're not even supposed to even mention that to that person. Well, we're here, we're gonna do your evaluation. Why did you go to? Did you, mention anything about why did you call a meeting? Like, you can't do that. People need to know that, if you are feel like you've been discriminated against, you can file a complaint with the EEOC. You have to do it within 180 days of the event, um, or the occurrence when it happened. You do have 180 days to file a complaint with EEOC. They supposedly investigate it, and then they will actually issue you a right to sue letter to determine what they found in the investigation. The only thing I can say is, if you filed a complaint, just be ready to go all the way, because that's what happens when you file EEOC complaint. They give you a right to sue. You have a certain time limit to file a lawsuit. If you don't, then to me, it's just that makes sense. You have a statute of limitation over here for 2 years, but then when you're dealing with EEOC, and then a lot of, you have 180 days, and then you have a short time period to file a lawsuit. So, just do your own thing. I can say is just do your research when you're if you feel that you've been discriminated on with your employment. Just do your research, and just make sure that you're willing to go all the way when you do that. I've experienced that. I've experienced discrimination in the workplace, and it was a great outcome for me. But you just have to know. Um, you have to just seek attorney's advice.
Right.
I would suggest that you something dealing with employment discrimination. If you see where a point that you can't resolve it, then you need to talk to an attorney.
And I'm just wondering, with COVID, during the COVID period, where people were actually working from home,
Right.
if the number of complaints increased or decreased as it relates to discrimination, because I'm sure there are ways of being discriminated against, even though you're not per se physically,
Right.
at the workplace. Even though you're working from your home, there's still other means of discrimination that can take place.
And it does. And I'm going to give you an example. Another example of the way, I kind of experienced it here before I retired. Um, it wasn't race related. It was maybe age related.
Hmm.
So you got a workload that you're giving me.
And others are getting a different
Yeah,
workload.
and you got the people that's been there the longest. They're getting a heavier workload than people that young folks.
Wow.
But we're on the same pay grade. Everybody's supposed to be getting the same amount of, and
Right.
and of course that I spoke up, and
Absolutely.
and everything changed. I'm like, yeah, and it was like everybody was like, well, what's happened? Why is my caseload So if you supposed to, that's what you're supposed to been had in the very beginning. You're supposed to have those many cases.
And they're
So
getting a light load, but
yeah,
getting the
same pay.
same pay.
Yeah, so that was an issue with me. I'm like, no. So it's different ways that you can be discriminated in your employment. So we just encourage you to seek legal advice from an attorney if you feel that you've been discriminated against.
Absolutely.
Some other things that we've been dealing with is probation violations. And so we've been, this is an ongoing thing, Mr. Douglas. This is, in back in 2020, right before Jay Howard came into office, we had requested a report of everyone that was incarcerated. And what we saw was people that had been incarcerated for 5 years, as long as 5 years, that had not gone to court.
Right.
And so, they were kind of attacking her because when she came in, she was like, these folks been here 3, 4, 5 years and hadn't gone to court yet. If they had evidence, they should have been moved on these cases. So she was kind of getting flack from that because she was moving these folks. Either you got the evidence or you don't have the evidence. So
Right.
you got people on probation violence. So we called a meeting with the mayor, the sheriff, the district attorney, state court probation, because that's
Right.
a very serious issue too. State court, superior court probation, community supervisions, the judges. We called the meeting with everybody because we want these folks moved out. Their cases that's a violation of their constitutional right. You have someone locked up for 3, 4, 5 years and they hadn't gone to court yet. So, that's what when she came in, people started criticizing, but you got a lot of times it's just like being the president. When you come in, you got to clean up other folks' mess.
Exactly.
So, that's what's going. We have this issue now that's going on, and we have an issue that we probably gonna most likely do a press conference sometime this week. But I have a case that we was working on. Got to respond back from the attorney for the community supervision, but a lot of time people, and this is another issue that I'm seeing too, Mr. Dumas, people retaliate against people who file complaints with our office. They retaliate against them.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's their right to seek help from the NAACP if they feel that they, and then we can either handle their complaint or tell them they need to get an attorney.
Right.
But what I saw last week was a young lady that went to court and she was issued an attorney after she had been sentenced. So
Wow.
I'm saying, so, the only way, she should have had an attorney
prior to
that, especially, when she contacted our office, she didn't understand the paperwork that they brought to her to sign. And so because she didn't sign it, what they did was they took her to court the next week. And, and that's another thing, Mr. Dumas. If they offer you a plea or offer you and you don't take it, then what's the purpose of your constitutional rights?
Right.
If you choose to
Plea.
go to court, choose not to plea, and you choose to go to court. So if I choose to go to court, I get more time because I exercise my constitutional right. What's the purpose of your constitutional rights if you can't exercise your constitutional right? You're punished for exercising your constitutional rights. So she was given more time when she went to court because she didn't sign the waiver. And so what she didn't understand it, because what was being explained to her and what was in writing was two different things. What should have happened, he should have got some clarification, come back to her. But instead she was taken to court. She was sentenced. And then she got paperwork after she'd been sentenced to have an attorney. That should have taken place in court.
Right.
When she was explaining that to them, it should have happened while it was taking place. So they, their attorneys have, responded to us. And, after I told them I wanted a printout of everybody that's incarcerated for a technical violation or, they were like, that's person that's confidential. It's not confidential information. If I pull a report from the jail that shows me everybody's incarcerated, it tells you the name. It tells you if there are enough for probation violations or if it's somebody that got a new charge, it tells you that on the report. So how is it
That
that
becomes
is confidential? Because it's not, once you're incarcerated, it's certain information that is, once, is if it's an open case, but what I'm asking for is not confidential.
no. You're asking for statistics, numbers,
Right.
not names, and per
Well,
se.
names come with it on
Oh,
the
so it's
report.
on
The
the
name,
report.
yeah. So it's public information, but you got people who are incarcerated for technical violations that are just in there because either they didn't report, or they, you know, you have to take tests, random drug tests. Those are technical violations. Someone with a new charge, that's a different. You may have to stay in there, but you causing people to lose their employment, lose their housing. You have these people incarcerated because they didn't report. Maybe stuff like that. I'm not saying, we got policies. You all have policies. You have rules, and people have to, abide by
Abide
the
by
rules,
those
because
rules.
but people do have rights, even though they are incarcerated, even though they have been charged with a crime and convicted of a crime. You still have rights. When you take somebody to court and does not offer legal representation, that's a violation of their constitutional rights.
Absolutely.
So we'll be dealing with that this week. I know that we're out of time, but we'll be dealing with that this week also. Also, the last person that called in last week for the gift card, we have not been able to reach you to get your address. Please make contact with us to give you your address so we can get your gift card to you.
Absolutely. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you on next week. Hope you have a great week. Until then, we'll see you later.
You have been listening to the live broadcast of the NAACP with Gwinnett Westbrook and Mr. Dumas. Come join us next Monday at 4 o'clock p.m. on 980 WDDO.
The views expressed on this program are not necessarily the views of the Glory 980 AM, the Glory Media Group, LLC, WDDO AM, its staff, management, or advertisers, but are the views and opinions of the participants